All right, well, thanks all you guys for coming out. This is exciting for me. But if you guys want to turn your Bibles to 1 John, or I'm not, John 1, there we go, get those mixed up. John 1, 4 through 5 is where we'll be kind of looking at the Word today. But before we start, I want to tell you guys about a Norwegian explorer. His name was Roald Edmundsen. Now, it's Norwegian, I don't know if that's how you pronounce that. But Roald Edmundsen, and he was an explorer, and he had a goal to be the first man to explore the South Pole. Now, obviously, this is a big journey that he was going to have to plan in months and years in advance. So he set out to do that. He started planning, he started getting all the details down, finding all the evidence and things of which he needed to achieve his goal of being the first man to explore the South Pole. So he got all the information he needed, got his tools together, grabbed 4 other men that he trusted to set out and achieve this goal of being the first man to explore the South Pole. But to put another twist on the story, there was another group of men who wanted to be the first men to explore the South Pole. So these 2 groups of guys were racing to get to the finish line, basically, being the first guys to explore the South Pole. So this put a lot of pressure on both teams. But on the 14th of December 1911, Roald Edmundsen, he set out with his men and his crew to achieve this goal. And the journey from the edge of the South Pole is going to take him 788 miles. And that's a far ways to go when you have no other means of transportation besides walking in a small team of dog sleds. So this was going to be a very long journey, a very trying journey, and a journey that he had to get done fast because he was racing these other guys. So he set out with his men and his group of dogs, and on they went. Almost the first day that they started, the temperatures dropped to be below negative 40 degrees. That's cold weather. I don't want to be walking around in that, and it's terrifying to think about. And they said as soon as they started out, the wind was so sharp, the cold was so bitter that they had blisters on their faces, they had blisters on their hands and their feet, and any little crack in their clothing, that wind got in and just burnt them. And that's a bad way to start off a 788-mile journey. That's not something I would want to do, but they used this as motivation. They kept on pressing on, and on they went. And a few weeks into their journey, this very terrible storm came through. This storm was so bad that the wind and the snow and the clouds during the daytime blocked out the sun completely. Now, Edmundsen, he said that this darkness was so dark he could not see his hand in front of his face. He could not see where his comrades were to his right and to his left. So he stopped during the time of the storm and hoped that his comrades had stopped too, because he could not see anything. Now that's incredible to think about in the midday, where the sun's shining bright and a storm comes through and it's gone completely. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced the darkness that dark, but that'd be a scary experience. So a few days later, the storm passed and his comrades did stop to his right and his left, and they kept going, but soon they had run out of food, and they weren't even halfway through their journey yet. So they had to make a choice. They had 42 sled dogs with them, and they made the decision together to shoot 24 of them to feed themselves and to feed the other dogs with them. Now at this point, you've got to think how heartbroken these people are. And these dogs weren't just what was carrying their luggage and carrying their equipment. Really, it was their source of warmth at night. They could, get next to these dogs for warmth. And these dogs were their personal pets. So there was a close connection with these. And you've got to think that this would tear them apart. They're covered in blisters, they're cold, and they're trying to beat this other team, which was honestly more equipped for the journey. But nevertheless, they kept on going. And soon after this, they finally reached the point of the center of the South Pole. They got out their little tools, they checked the sun, they did the distance to see if they were in the right spot, and they had reached the center of the South Pole. So all 4 men, they grabbed their country's flag, they pushed it into the snow. Now, they had achieved their goal of exploring the South Pole and being the first men to say that they could do that, but they didn't want to stay there for long, so they almost instantly packed up and headed out. And thankfully, the weather was a lot more forgiving on the trip back. So it made for easy travel home and quick travel home. So upon their arrival, of course, there's going to be people that are with the newspaper and journalists that want to get information from this travel. So as soon as they get off the ships, they get back home, they're being shot with questions right and left by the mass of people that are around them to congratulate them and to bring them home. So they talk for a little while and they say, yes, we were the first ones to arrive. We are the first men to explore the South Pole. But as all these questions were being shot out, there was one question in particular that Edmundson, he heard, he thought about, and he wanted to answer it. The question was a reporter that was trying to get information for the paper asked, what was the most frightening point of this journey? Now, Edmundson, he looked down at the ground, thought for probably a good 5 minutes. Then he looked up with a very distraught look on his face and said, the darkness. At that point, when that storm came through and everything was completely dark, where there should have been a sun shining through, he was afraid. And he said, despite the shooting of all the dogs, the blisters on their hands and their feet and their face, all of these things, the darkness is what was the most frightening on his journey. Now, the darkness is a scary thing. I don't know if any of you guys have experienced such a darkness like this, one where it seems unrealistic almost. But this was the darkness that they had experienced, and the darkness that they really didn't ever want to experience again, and for good reason. But in John 1:4-5, let me read it here real quick. It says, in him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. Now, maybe you can see where I'm going with this. I want to talk about the light and the life that we've been given by Jesus Christ. And now he was the light, and he has shared that with us. So, another important thing is to know that this light, the darkness cannot overcome. So, what is this light that the Bible is always talking about? You read throughout Scripture, you see this word. The Greek word here is phos, which means light. Now, it's used 72 times in about 60 different verses, and it's used a lot. So I want to read to you guys a few verses that have this word phos, which is light, and kind of give you an idea biblically what this light means. So in Matthew 5:14-16, it says, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everybody in the house. In the same way, let your light shine, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Luke 8:16 says, no one lights a lamp and hides it under a clay jar or puts it under a bed. Instead, they put it on a stand so that those who come in can see the light. John 3:21, but whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. And the last one here I'll read is John 8:12. When Jesus spoke again, he said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in the darkness, but will have the life of light. Or the light of life, sorry. So, you look at all these verses, this light is always something that is so obvious, something that everybody can see when they come into contact with it. It is a light that is shining bright, a light that really anybody who comes into contact will see that there's something different, that there is something that is bright, something shining. Now, the biblical usage of this word, I'll read it here, and it says, that which exposes the view to all, openly and publicly. It is something that is always seen and always overcomes the darkness. So, back home from where I'm from in South Dakota, I live right on the edge of the Missouri River. Beautiful place, but on this river there is the Big Bend Dam. This dam is, it's huge. And actually, if this dam was sitting on top of dry ground, because most of it's underground, if it was sitting on top of dry ground, it would be the tallest building in South Dakota. That might not seem too extravagant, seeing as that there's not too many buildings in South Dakota, but it puts an emphasis on not how tall it is, but how deep under the ground it is. That's what I wanted to get the picture going here. This was super far underneath the ground, and I had the opportunity of going on a tour of this dam. So, during this tour, we're going through seeing all these cool things, and we reach not the bottom, but as far as they could take us safely. The tour guide could take us safely. So we're at this point where we're in this hallway, and my goodness, it was huge. It looked like both ways this hallway was going for miles, and it was huge. It really was. And so the tour guide, he looks at us and he says, "All right, I'm going to do something with your guys' permission. I want to turn out the lights to show you how dark it really is down here." So a couple of the kids got close to their parents. They're scared, and the adults were hanging on to the wall so they didn't get lost. So they turned off the lights, and from both ends of this hallway, the lights were clicking one by one, all the way down until it got to us, and it went dark. And that was a scary experience, watching the lightness slowly disappear until it got to us, and then boom. And I tell you what, this is a darkness I've never experienced. And this is also the same darkness people describe, like when they're in the back of a cave and you turn off your flashlight and it's completely dark. This darkness it was a scary thing. And it seemed as if it was so thick I could reach out and grab it, put it in my pocket and take it home with me. But this darkness was all around us. You could see nothing. You could see nothing but darkness. You couldn't see your hand. You couldn't. And the tricky thing is in this hallway, anything you said, and of course all these people were, talking, and kids were crying now, and all these sounds were bouncing off the wall, so it was confusing. But the tour guide at this point, he gets all of our attention and says, try to look in the direction of my voice. So we're all kind of spinning in circles, going around, trying to figure out, because all the bouncing where this guy is. So we hear him digging in his pockets, the change and the keys are rattling around, and he pulls something out of his pocket. Now, a few seconds later, you hear the strike of a match. He holds this little match up that's lit, this little tiny flame, super small, and it lights up almost the entire hallway. Now, this was extremely cool. I think about how dark it was just, a couple seconds ago, and this one little tiny match lit everything up, lit all the people up, lit the hallways, almost all the way down. And I think about how thick that darkness was that I was just experiencing, and how instantly it disappeared. And this light that was lit, it was something that was so obvious. It wasn't something that you could miss when you were next to it. And I was at the, kind of the back of the line of all the people, and I could see this light plainly. And if darkness could ever overcome light, I feel like this would be the time to do it, because if you could measure darkness, there'd be a lot in that hallway, because it literally had no light from anything. All the lights were turned off, the sun was not getting down in there, but still this flame could not be put out. Now, it was an incredible thing, and it was also a scary thing. But, again, I'm pretty sure we can see where I'm going with this, and I hope we do, so we're on the same page here, that we are called to be a light in this dark world. We are supposed to be a light that is set apart. We're supposed to be a light that gives light to all of those around us. And just as the meaning of light is to be obvious, so that light should be obvious in our light, or that light should be obvious in our life. There we go. So the biblical light that we're talking about here, that we see throughout Scripture, is a light that is obvious to those around us, and the darkness cannot overtake it. But what does it look like to be the light the Bible talks about? Now, in John 1:4, we see that this life is given to us by Jesus. Jesus is this light, the light of life that is given to us. And if you look into the Greek word here, the Greek word for life is zoe. Now, this word doesn't just mean life. This word literally means a life that is active and a life that is vigorous. A life that is devoted to God, a life that is given through us through the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, a gift to us. Now, if there is ever a story that I can think about, or an application to this, of somebody who was living in darkness and somebody who gained this light, first thing that comes to my mind is Paul. He was a man that was persecuting the Christians, just trying to destroy the church of God, and was doing these acts of darkness to the Christians. Now, if you read in Galatians chapter 1, 13 through 14, it says, "For you have," this is Paul talking, "For you have heard of my previous way of life in Judaism, how intensely I persecuted the church of God and tried to destroy it. I was advancing in Judaism beyond many of my own age and among my people, and was extremely zealous for the traditions of my father." So, an important word to look at here is the word intensely. It doesn't just say he was persecuting the Christians or trying to destroy the church of God. He was doing these things intensely. That puts an emphasis on the amount of hatred and anger towards these group of people. That it wasn't just something he was doing, but he was doing it intensely. Now, in Acts 9, you can read about Paul's conversion. And then even later on, the next following verses, 15 and 16 in Galatians 1, it says, "But when God, who set me apart from my mother's womb, called me by his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son to me, that I might preach him among the Gentiles. My immediate response was not to consult any human being." So we see a man who was living in such darkness, who was doing such evil and dark things to persecute the Christians and trying to destroy the church of God intensely, who has now been obviously changed into someone who is so obviously showing this light through his life, the way that we're called to do it. He was set apart. Anybody who came into contact with him could see that there was a light in his life, a light that was given to him by Jesus Christ. Now, what does that look like to us? What is this biblical light that we're supposed to have look like in our lives? Well, I think it's the fact that we have to be obedient to God. We have to have fellowship with God, have a relationship with him, and we are to obey his commands. It's us showing that we're striving to be perfect, but can admit that we're not, that we fall short of the glory of God. And it should be something that is obviously seen by everybody that we come into contact with. So let's step back for a second and take some personal evaluation. You guys evaluate your lives, and I'll evaluate mine. So this light, is it something that people can see in our lives? Do people come to us when they lose a loved one or a crisis happens in their life? Can they come to us or come to me for comfort? Can they know that I am willing to help them and willing to love them? Are we being a positive influence in the people around us, in the lives of the people of those that we come into contact daily, whether that's boss, coworkers, students, or teachers, neighbors, anybody that we come into contact in our daily lives? Are we showing this light that we have? Can they see it obviously? So we are called to be this light, and we are called to be this light in a very obvious way. Everybody that we come into contact should see that we have this light in us, and that light should point to Jesus, and that we have been given that light through him and through his death and resurrection. There once was this children's camp, and it was around 8 o'clock at night. It was dark outside, and all the children were in the mess hall. They were getting ready to go out to the campfire. They were getting ready to go out and roast marshmallows, sing campfire songs and stuff like that. And they all had their flashlights. The exciting part of camp is running outside with their flashlights and shining at everything you can see, or can't see, I should say. So it's about time to do this. The camp counselor announces, all right, in 5 minutes we're going to go out to the campfire and sing campfire songs and roast some marshmallows. And the kids are like, oh yeah. So they get the backpacks, take the flashlights out, they're shining them around in this room. And the camp counselor looks at them and is wondering why they're shining their light inside, because it's meant for the outside. And obviously these lights, while they're being shined inside, it's not as obvious. You're not going to be able to see it on the walls and stuff if you're shining it around. So he tells these kids, all right, we're leaving in 3 minutes. Here's the last rule I'm going to give you. When you go outside, you have to turn your flashlights off. They'll look at him kind of funny and think, why? The point of our flashlights is to use them outside. And they're kind of all distressed a little bit and thinking, these flashlights are supposed to be used outside. You can't tell us not to do that. We're going to get lost. And So these kids are complaining, and eventually he says, I'm just kidding. You turn on your flashlights and make sure you use them. Because the flashlights were not only so the adults and the camp sponsors could see where the kids were, but also so these kids could find their way to the fire, to their destination. Now, we have a light in our lives, the light that we've been talking about, and that light is, like I've been saying, something that people should be able to see obviously in our lives, something that is a difference in our lives, something that is set apart. But also, this light that we have is a light that we're supposed to use when we go into the darkness of this world, which we do daily. And this world is dark. This light that we have is supposed to be what helps us find our way. So if we go outside and we flip our light off, that gives Satan the perfect opportunity to come and pounce on us, to take us down and try to put that light out for good. Just like in Matthew it is saying, you don't light a lamp and put it under a bowl, or in Luke where it said you don't put it under a bed once you light the light. You use this light for when you go into the darkness. We go into the darkness daily because that is what this world is. This world is dark. But we have been given the gift of life, and that light of Jesus Christ that we're supposed to use when we go into the darkness, because it is going to help us find our way. It's going to help us to not get lost and to avoid temptations and to avoid the things that will always be hitting us in the dark world. So we have been given this gift of light, this life, and it is supposed to be obvious in our life that we are set apart. People are supposed to see it obviously in our lives that we're set apart and different from the dark world. Just like that match in the bottom of that dam. It was lit and everybody could see it. It was an obvious thing. And that is the light that we're supposed to have in our life. The life of Jesus Christ has been given to us as a gift. We need to use that light to guide our way through the dark world, and use that light to bring others to Christ and to point them to the one who has given us this gift. So, thank you guys for coming out. Appreciate it.
Thank you.